Dixie here. Today I want to talk to you about a piece of gear that I've recently purchased, and that is a new food pot. For those of y'all who have been watching this channel for a while, you probably know that I've been using my same old trusty food pot, a Stanco aluminum grease pot, since I started backpacking just shy of 10 years ago. In that time, I've hiked over 10,000 miles, and my grease pot slash food pot has been with me for almost all of those miles. We have definitely seen some stuff together. But I think for the Arizona trail, I'm finally gonna try a thru hike with a titanium food pot. Basically, the way this came around is I needed to get a new food pot anyway because my husband Rodney wants to join me for a stretch of the Arizona trail, and we've got some backpacking plans for later this year in the summer, and then just going forward, we'll need 2 food pots. So because I was getting him a new food pot anyway, I decided why not test drive it myself? So what's the new pot I got? It again is a titanium pot by Soto Outdoors. Although I should mention that the thickness of this particular pot is only 0.3 millimeters, so it's actually pretty thin as far as titanium pots go, but that helps it be much more lightweight. My Stanco grease pot, again, is made out of aluminum, and it's honestly not really meant to be like a cook pot. It's meant to collect bacon grease, like your Meemaw's little bacon grease pot up there on the stove. That's what this is for, but people who backpack on a budget, like myself when I started the Appalachian Trail thru hike, it was lightweight and also cheap, so that's what I went for. This food pot has been through some stuff, and it's got the battle scars to prove it, but it still holds up and functions just fine. And again, for 10,000 miles, that's to me really saying something about its durability. As far as capacity goes, I definitely wanted something comparable to my Stanco grease pot, which holds 40 ounces or 1,189 milliliters. The titanium pot that I got by Soto Outdoors holds 1,100 milliliters, so close enough. As far as weight comparison goes, my Stanco grease pot, as it currently stands, is 3.45 ounces. That's including the lid. It used to have a little plastic knob on the lid, and I at one time had like an eye bolt on there, but I've since removed that. So in its current state, it is 3.45 ounces, but I think the claimed weight online is like 3.5 ounces to 4 ounces. The Soto Outdoors titanium pot weighs 3.9 ounces, and that's the pot, the lid, and the lifter. I don't need the lifter, and that weighs 0.7 ounces, so I'm gonna shave that off the total weight. So for me, just the pot and the lid will be 3.2 ounces, and I'm used to using a bandana to lift my pot off of the stove anyway. With this upgrade to a titanium pot, I'll be saving a whole 1/4 ounce. One thing that the titanium pot does have that my aluminum grease pot does not, and I really like, is it's got little graduated tick marks. They are in milliliters, so I'll have to get used to that conversion, but I think that that will definitely be useful. Another thing to consider is the heat transfer in both of these metals, because if you're cooking on trail, then you're obviously heating it up to boil water or cook your food in it or whatever. And if you're interested in minimizing fuel consumption or maximizing the time that you have to enjoy doing other things than cooking, since time is our most valuable resource, then you might want to know which pot would cook your food or boil water fastest. Well, in general, aluminum is definitely better at conducting heat in comparison to titanium. And titanium cookware is known to have hot spots and just not heat as evenly. But plot twist, with that said, aluminum, if it's super thin or if it's uneven, like the current state of my food pot, then it can also end up with hot spots and not heat as evenly. Of course, you also have to consider that these food pots are not exactly the same dimensions. In fact, the titanium pot has a wider base, and so therefore the same amount of water would be more shallow in the pot, and there would be a bigger surface to heat and transfer heat into the water. So I just wanted to see for myself personally in the field which one of these would yield me a pot of boiled water faster. Now, I did this in my bathroom because it is raining outside today and it's windy, and so I couldn't guarantee that the wind conditions would be exactly the same for each pot, and I don't have two of the same exact stoves. So anyway, I did it in the bathroom, but I did have my bedroom windows open for ventilation. It is not recommended that you use one of these backpacking stoves indoors, so just wanted to go with that full disclosure to start with. I measured out 500 milliliters in each pot, and I let the water sit for a while. That way it would hopefully come to the same temperature. Unfortunately, it was 0.3 degrees different, even though I let it sit out for a long time, but I figured close enough. I lit the stove and let the tines heat up for a little while before I put the first pot on. That way you couldn't argue that the stove was cold when you first started out. And I also left the stove on the whole time. I did not adjust the little fuel knob. That way that would be consistent. I wanted to record the time that it took for each pot to go from that room temperature number up to 212 degrees Fahrenheit because that's supposedly boiling. But the first time I attempted the experiment, it would not get much over 210 degrees, even with a rolling boil. So I'm just gonna say that my thermometer was probably not the best one for the job and not quite calibrated exactly. So anyway, I redid the experiment again, let everything cool off, and took some time to start back at ground zero, and I recorded from room temperature to 210 degrees. The titanium pot took 8 minutes and 50 seconds to hit 210 degrees. The aluminum pot took 8 minutes and 12 seconds. So the aluminum pot won by a whole 38 seconds. So it didn't yield a huge difference, but hey, seconds add up to minutes, and it was fun to experiment anyway. One thing I can say in favor of the titanium pot while I was doing this experiment is it's more grippy out of the box on the stove tines. It just kind of grabs and you don't have to worry about it just sliding off. The aluminum grease pot right out of the box, that thing will slide right off your stove. So if you're gonna go that route, I definitely recommend roughing it up, whether you forget until you get out on trail and you just rough it up on a rock or some gravel, or whether you take sandpaper to it at home, it's gonna end up looking rough anyway. So that will save you a meal or two. Ask me how I know, I learned the hard way. And finally, for a price point comparison, the grease pot cost me, I think around 10 bucks. I think it was actually $8 from Kmart when I first got it. Nowadays, you can find them online for less than $15. It might fluctuate depending on where you get it. And the titanium pot costs me $45 from Garage Grown Gear. So that's pretty much all of the technical side of things. I will say an underlying reason why I decided to at least test drive this food pot at this time is I've really been trying to focus on living a healthier lifestyle over the past several years, especially as I was focusing on reproductive health when I started planning to have children. And I read this book called It Starts with the Egg, which is actually a really good book. If you're trying to have kids, it's something to consider, especially if you have older eggs like I do. There just isn't a ton of information out there that makes me feel confident that aluminum is perfectly safe. And I don't know that just boiling water in the aluminum pot would leach anything into it to worry about consuming, but just in case, I do want to have other children. I do want to keep my body as healthy as possible, and especially with me breastfeeding right now and not knowing what can pass through breast milk, so it just seemed like a good time to test out the titanium food pot just in case, because I know for sure that it won't hurt me to try that food pot, well, except hurt my feelings because my old trusty and we've been on some adventures together, and it is kind of hard to imagine going on a thru hike with a nude food pot, I'm not gonna lie. So anyway, I will let y'all know how it performs over the 800 miles of the Arizona Trail. And just for the fun of it, I mean, I'm pretty confident that I am gonna take this one, but I would love to hear in the comments what your favorite food pot is and why you like it so much, if you don't mind sharing. Thank y'all so much for watching. If you found this video useful, don't forget to share it with a friend, and we will see y'all next time.